Welcome to the Private Lender Podcast with your hosts from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
So earlier this month, we had our third Inner Circle Mastermind meeting. It's only been going on about a year now. It was meeting number 3. The group has really grown. We had about 25 lenders from different parts of the country there. We were in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're going to jump in and break down everything we did, learned, and all that went into it.
Yeah, no doubt. And, not only was it just a great group of experienced hard money lenders and private money lenders, but it was just an overall good group of people in general. And I think that's what makes up a really good mastermind group, when you have a lot of like-minded people that are very transparent and open and willing to share. Again, we're not going to disclose any sensitive information about who was in that room or things like that. Unfortunately, that's not fair, for everybody, because it is kind of an exclusive group. But I will say that, we got surveys from everybody at the end. And one of the big things that what was a common response was that everybody was very open and transparent and willing to help everybody grow. And everybody got a lot of value from, the individual persons. We do something called a brag, ask, share, where in essence you go up and you brag a little bit about your company so everybody fully knows who you are. And then you ask, right? And you ask of, hey, this is a big challenge I'm having inside my business. I was hoping to get some help on these key things. And then at the end, a share, something of value that you believe other folks in that room don't know that you can share. So overall, it worked out great. You want to go through some of maybe the presentations that we started with, because we also did add some presentations to this go around.
Yeah, I want to talk about the presentations and then also just what the 3 days were like. So maybe we'll back up a little bit and start there and just run people through what the format was, because it was really productive business wise and also fun. So kind of to our surprise and delight, a lot of the mastermind group, it turns out they're golfers. And we are. So when we were talking to people about who is going to be coming to this November event, we realized that we were going to have 4 foursomes. That's a lot of golfers, 16 golfers. And we had it at Jason's brother's club, which is a really cool spot in the suburbs of Nashville. And it was a super fun day. We lucked out on the weather. It was November in Nashville and it was 70 and sunny. We had a really fun day of golf the first night. And then we had a happy hour. We chose a spot that basically has everything that you need within walking distance. So the hotel, a number of different restaurants, some retail, all within this one complex. So it was very, very convenient, worked out great. Had a happy hour that night. And then the next morning, we started the 2 days of meetings, 2 full days, 9 to 5. Jason already shared the mastermind format, which is the bulk of it. The meat and potatoes is when people get up for 30 minutes and they present what they're working on and what they need help with. And then they get input from the whole room. It's super valuable. And you end up learning stuff that you didn't know you needed just by hearing what other people are asking and what other people are responding to them. And so, like you started with, we had a couple presentations that we did and that our friend Ian Horowitz did as well. So I started off the first morning, I think it was Wednesday morning, with a presentation related to raising capital, investor relations, part of our process and like the system that a lot of people listening or watching right now are already familiar with. And then also some new stuff of what has changed with investor relations recently. What other things have we added into that process? What are those conversations like related to economic conditions and interest rates and their return and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was lead off hitter on that first morning with a presentation.
Yeah. And then we led into the first core group of mastermind presentations. And it's funny because the earlier presentations typically go a little bit longer because it just spurs up a lot of conversation. And towards the end of day 3, technically there's 2 full days. Chris talked about us playing golf and doing happy hour day 1, but it's 2 full days, the event. But there's so much action packed early on because, there's a lot of low hanging fruit that everybody either has questions on or concerns or information that they need, or, things like that. So some of the first ones go early, and typically everybody, I think exclusively everybody in the room said, hey, not only did I get my money's worth, but I got the return on my time for coming out here and taking time away from my business, like within the first hour of being here, because there's things that like, you don't know what you don't know, right? That's how it works. And what we like to do is typically put some of the members that have been in the group for a while to go first, just because, if you're newer, think about it like this. If you're newer to a mastermind group and you just don't have a relationship with everybody in the group yet, and you're, still uncertain of how the process and how everything goes, sometimes you kind of have your guard up a little bit, and you might not want to be as open or transparent because you're not really sure what to expect, or you might just not want to put yourself out there, right? Some people are just scared to put themselves out there. So we like to start off with folks that we know are fully transparent, fully willing to share anything and be criticized to the T, meaning that like, hey, tell me if I'm royally screwing this up, and I'm not going to take it personally. And I think that every single person in that room had that, but it was good to kind of start off with folks that had been through this before, just to kind of start with. So then when the next person comes, it's like, oh, wow, he just told me everything, financial data, unit data, issues, past deals that they lost money on, or whatever the case is, right? Like fully transparent, because mastermind only works if you're willing to give it your all and, be open about everything, the good and the bad. It's very easy for everyone to toot their horn, but the real thing and the real value is, what's happening behind closed curtains that you're willing to share in order to improve and learn on.
Yeah. And also that's a good point about structuring, like who's going to go win in the right way to keep it as interactive and lively as possible and entertaining and everything else, because the reality is that like these are heavy days. And we've been saying that ever since we were in Russell Brunson's mastermind back in like 2015 or something. It's a full day of thinking and concentrating and interacting, and you feel like kind of physically tired by the end of the day. And so another thing in terms of structure that we wanted to do was we wanted to mix up different types of lenders throughout day 1 and day 2. And because people are in different spots in their business, and they also have different goals. Like some people are there like, I want to deploy, I have 2 million of my own money outstanding. I want to build that up to 5, and that's their goal, and earn that rate of return and keep that money working. That's what they're in it for. And then some people are looking to build out the full scope of an operation like ours, like 50 million deployed. There's even a group in the room with 90 million deployed. And so we were curious about them. They have more out on the street than we do. What are their systems like? What's their marketing like? How is their team structured? And so there's just so many different angles of stuff that you come away with. And so that definitely struck me. And then also everyone ended up really, really grateful that they had, taken the time, spent the money, invested in a number of different ways to be in the group, and to hear all the feedback of like, how much they learned, what a great time they had, how they really connected with people, how people are looking to do deals and share capital and all that great stuff. And then, you come away from it like, man, this is so worth the time and the effort and everything else, because it is work. It is like a heavy thing running a mastermind group.
Yeah. And here's the thing, being a small business owner to begin with is typically a lonely job, a lonely business. And then being a hard money lender is even more lonely, because like there's very little resources, and there's very little people. And if you talk to your typical sphere of influence, they don't know what the hell you do. They don't even get it for the most part. They might think that they get it, but they don't really know what happens behind the scenes and all the intricacies of raising capital and finding good deals and marketing and operations. And they just don't know. I mean, even key employees inside the business sometimes don't even know how some of this stuff is operated. And the beauty of the lending business is like, there's definitely wrong ways to do things, but like at the same time, there's no like exact right way to do it either, right? Everyone has different goals. Everybody comes from different backgrounds. Everyone has different, things that they want or that they're good at or systems that they have in place. And like, no one's there to judge whose is better or whose is worse, right? You could have a smaller portfolio and be more profitable than a bigger portfolio. And if that's what you want, or you could have a bigger portfolio and have it completely hands off, or you can just want to deploy your own money, responsibly. It goes a long way. So we had a catered lunch in the conference room both days. That's typically what we do, because we want to keep things moving, right? We want to keep these things going and fluid, and we want to make sure any downtime you can, every attendee can spend time and create relationships. Because what we realized, and this wasn't ever intended, I don't think, but what we realized after the first group occurred, a year and a half ago, all of a sudden, members were sharing capital. Members were sharing deals. Members were sharing employees and vendors and resources and attorneys and docs and everything. And it turned into like, hey, I'm a little bit tight on capital. Do you have additional capital that you're willing to deploy into my deals? Or, I've got lots of deals this month. I can't handle them all. Or, hey, you have a great content person. Can we share that? Even down to, hey, you have a great bookkeeper and, you don't have enough work for them. Can I pay you a retainer and use your bookkeeper? So it goes down to everything. So after the first night, we had, a formal dinner at a really nice Italian restaurant. Everything was walking distance. Typically, when we do these groups, we try to get a private room. This particular restaurant didn't really have a private room, so we divided into 3 tables. But it was still great. So instead of like having one big room next to each other, there was a lot more kind of intimate conversations between like 6 or 7 people at a table, or some tables had 10 people and things like that. So it worked out well.
Yeah, it was also interesting to see like who gravitates towards whom, in terms of like where they're going to sit and hang out during the dinner and who they're chatting with and everything else. Really cool stuff. And a lot of masterminds don't pick up a lot of these tabs, and that's what some of the other members said. We do. Like, we want to host. We want to, invest in the group by hosting the dinner and the happy hours and golf and all that kind of stuff too. We think that's a good look, and it's the way we like to run our group. So then day 2, we were back on with another full day of masterminding. Day 2 of the meetings anyway, day 3 of the full trip. And you want to break down a little bit about your presentation?
Yeah. So the next day I did a presentation on the life cycle of a hard money loan. I think that's what it was described. The life cycle of a client. Sorry. The life cycle of a client, for anywhere from how we get our clients, where they come from, right? How we market in order to bring them to the front door. And then how does origination works? We went through some scripting tactics. Then we went through, we process, we spit out a term sheet. How do we process the loan? How do we underwrite the loan? The loan closed. What are some of the requirements that we always have to have in place before we wire funds related to signed closing instructions, interest paid, reviewing the HUD-1 settlement statements, things like that. So we went through a lot of closing checklists and things that we kind of had in place of exactly how we do it. And then those things back office, like post-closing processing payments, doing payoff statements, some reports that we look at internally so we can determine, the status of how much construction they've done, if they're behind on payments, where they're at related to the project, maturity dates, things like that. So a lot of things that, in essence, everything that we do internally. And then the reason it was called the life cycle of a client is most of our clients turn into repeat clients. So what happens towards the end? Figuring out ways along the way to wine and dine these clients and provide value, so we turn them into a repeat client after the fact. So a lot of the stuff we did was, a lot of that presentation was tailored into that. And then after that presentation was over, it was back into the grind of the Hard Money Mastermind, and or the mastermind section, I should say, of brag, ask, share. And that's just a big, that was the big component of it. But we like to do presentations of what we're seeing in the market. There's still a lot of members in the group that can benefit from presentations, either from us or from other members in the group. And in previous events, we've invited one of our attorneys that does some of our loan docs. His name is Harris, because he does docs in a lot of different states. So he works with a lot of those. He works with a lot of the members in the inner circle group. We usually invite him down to speak. We did that the last two events. He actually came for 24 hours, actually technically like 18 hours, maybe even less. But he didn't speak, but we co-hosted a happy hour that last night with everybody. So it was good for him to kind of come around, see everybody, ask questions, because he's just a really, really good resource.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So on the second day of the meeting, we wrapped up, worked through all the masterminds. Some people were starting to leave town because they were flying out that night instead of the next day. A number of us, probably about half the group, stayed till the next day. So after we finished up meetings, we did our happy hour co-hosted by Harris. And then about 10 of us, we had gotten our work done. We had gotten the important work done, the heavy lifting done. So we're in Nashville. We hit Broadway, right? Went out to all the normal spots there, like Tootsie's and Honky Tonk and Aldean's, and bar hopping around Broadway the way it should be, right? So we ended it with a bang, and then it was up and out the next day. So we have our next meeting in May, because we do these twice a year. We're getting close to capacity, but we probably could have a few more people. There is a capacity to how many people you want or could even have in a 2-day meeting in order to fit it all in. And we're getting kind of close to that. But in case you are interested, feel free to go check out hardmoneymastermindinnercircle.com and apply there. You can speak with our program director, and we will see you guys here next time on the Private Lenders Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not intended for legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.